Live on twitch.tv/H2O Happy Dude. And of course, I am the one, H2O Happy Dude, here with my best friend and, well, not more acquaintances more than anything. This is the first time we've talked outside of a studio. So, ladies and gentlemen, Brodee Scott.
Yes, I'm on either left or right. I'm not really sure which way to look, but yeah, I'm here virtually because this is 2020 and that's what we do.
Yeah, COVID's a pain in the ass. Oh, by the way, this is uncensored, so you don't have to put your Radio Free GTR filter on.
Yeah, or any of my others. Yeah, we stayed the FCC guideline, if you want to say that, as far as cussing and stuff like that. And we took a little flack from our older audience for it, but we're praised by our younger audience for keeping that same, we'll say, MO in the show. So yeah, they're family friendly esque. Some of the topics tend to breach that a little bit, as kind of push the envelope just a touch, but PG-13 is about as high as we go.
Just for the shiggles and. Can I just hear you drop the F bomb once?
Yeah, well, it's funny. If you talk to me outside of any microphone in the room, and my office is like plagued with microphones.
Gotcha.
I drop them all the time. I have one of the worst potty mouths, but it's funny. You get me in a room with a microphone that I know is off, or you get me in a room where it's as we call in the business, safe harbor. Um, yeah, radio people are some of the foul mouthed people that you'll ever meet in your life. So the 7 words are very easily and very freely thrown, especially around my house, and I'm sure my kids know how to cuss at this point. So yeah, I've been known to drop the F bomb a time or two, but
Well, we like in one sentence spoke about how we met through Geek Tank and the Cinemassacast coming to iHeartRadio Studios for podcast recording. How
yeah.
did you go from working at that station to actually producing podcast and web content?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been in the radio business for this is my 19th year, 20th year in radio, and I mean, I started at the ripe young age of like 15, you know,
Jesus.
uh, and so I've been in it for a minute. But that being said, I've also seen the evolution of radio and where it's going, how it's going, and more importantly, um, the adage that everybody says, well, radio is dead. Yes and no. Radio has evolved, and we right now are doing radio. It's so funny. Like everybody's like, I don't listen to radio. I listen to podcasts, or I don't listen to radio. I listen to Pandora. I listen to Spotify. You can go down the list of all the. I listen to my MP3s. Uh, uh, Bitch, that's called radio. So as much as you don't want to admit it that you are not listening to radio, somebody programs those music stations. Somebody puts this podcast or any podcast that you might listen to together, and the good ones are produced by radio people. Or people who love that industry and that medium so much that they become students of that medium. So why did I go strictly into podcasts? Well, simple. That's where radio is gone. um, I to say radio is dead, I would agree that most terrestrial radio is dead. Who killed it? The corporations. But that's just me speaking very frankly and very openly. Now you're going to get a DJ or a morning show that's farmed in from somewhere else now, and that's okay because it works. It works money wise. It works, region wise. If you have people in charge that understand that region. So, um, you know, it's just the way the world is gone. Now I'm producing for I've lost count of how many podcasts that I'm actually producing for. It's kind of funny, and people seek me out to say, hey, listen, by the way, I need your, you know, magic fingers on this imaging or something along those lines. I'm happy to do it, but now I just charge people for it. So.
Well, now knowing that, I'm really glad you're letting me get you for free tonight.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as I always like to say, I am a prostitute, not a whore. So, prostitutes charge, whores give
Ah,
away for. So.
so with the like I mentioned this to Wayne, we essentially sat down and had like a 45-minute conversation based on the entertainment changing during COVID.
Hmm.
And with everyone having access to a microphone or, in my case, a Twitch channel, and basically producing content in some way, shape, or form, and I'm including YouTube in this as well.
Mm.
With what seems to be an oversaturation of content out there, do you actually think that in the COVID era that it's actually viable to start one from scratch?
It depends on how, and it depends on, obviously, in starting up anything, business or whatever, and they should be treated like a business. It's always your baby. So how far you're willing to take something is completely up to you. To what lengths are you willing to put your baby out there? You want to see it grow. There's going to be growing pains along the way. And as I like to tell people who are starting up podcasts all the time, I'm like, listen, if you don't come to a point where you're like, I love this, but I don't know if I can do this anymore, and you still come in, then it's not worth it, because that moment is going to hit you of, why am I doing this? I can't tell you how many times in actual terrestrial radio, when I was working at a radio station, I was driving to work going, why the hell am I doing this? Like, why am I putting myself through this misery, this constant battle of, did I say the wrong thing? Did I piss somebody off? And even now, like, the listeners and this is the issue now, I think, with podcasters especially, is that we get analytic data in real time. We can see when people tune out at a specific second. Oh, well, I said something XYZ and they tuned out. Well, I lost that listener for good. Meanwhile, the kid who was listening, who you just dropped that number from, just got done cutting the lawn. It's so many different variables in there, but we as creators sit there and pine over these analytical datas that, quite honestly, don't mean much. They really don't, in the grand scheme of your passion to drive your content forward. The people who do it and do it well, successfully well, are people who, quite honestly, had the money to push it to the next level, who got that one up from somebody else. And it's, by the way, every business is the same. It's all about who you know, and it's all about, making contacts and relationships. And that's all it is. That's literally every business model is built around the same thing: who you know and how you know them, and what they can do for you. So, in that regard, keep creating content. Listen, this is a great time right now for creators. It's a chance for you as the creator to sit down and say, okay, I love doing this, but is it really something I love doing? Maybe it's something about that. Maybe it's something, the inner workings behind it. Shoot, my wife and I literally were just talking about this today, where I am now doing my dream job, and that's producing. I've always been a producer since the day one when I got into radio. Like I said, too long ago. Much before gray hair and children and a wife and whatever. Way back then, I was producing and I loved it. I was behind the scenes. Yeah, I like talking and I like hosting shows and I like doing that kind of stuff. But if my voice went, I've always said it. If my voice went, I would just sit there and produce all day, every day. And that's what I'm doing now. And that's what COVID, surprisingly enough, if you can find the silver lining, has allowed me to do this from home. I don't leave home. I, barely put on pants some days. So it's really nice in that regard. Um, and I would urge creators, if you are starting something up, uh, know the pitfalls that they exist. They will be there. No creator through the history of time in any medium has sat there and said, I love my job every single day.
It,
None.
it's kind of like how it was for me for a while. I started. God, I'm afraid to actually take a look at this, but it's like I've been H2O Happy Dude since January 19th, 2014.
Right.
And 4 years ago, I just made affiliate, and I like as soon as I hit affiliate, I'm like, yeah, I can actually make money at this. 2 years after I hit affiliate, I finally made money at it.
Yeah, right.
And
Right.
like, one of the biggest things is that you're programmed as a Twitch streamer to not pay attention to the numbers, but as a
Right.
podcaster and someone who
That's
produces
all you
audio,
do.
you have to. That's the thing, because even though, like, for example, like I did 2 episodes by myself, and I didn't feel like they were up to par. They got
Mhm.
no listens whatsoever. However, like the one with Wayne that I did last week, and I'm assuming that because people are actually listening to it,
Mhm.
that it it has this slow climb, and then it's going to plateau.
Yeah, that's the tricky part though, is when you start looking at the analytical data and you start boiling down numbers and stuff like that. I'm going to be honest with you, as a program director of a terrestrial radio station, okay, we sat there and we pined over numbers. We would sit there and look at these charts go up and down and fluctuate, and your TSL is down, but your Cume is up, and all this other, and numbers start flowing out the window before long you're cross-eyed going, I don't know which way is up and which way is down. Is that good? um and you start realizing, when you start take a step back from all that, you just go, okay, wait a minute. At the end of the day, did we put out the best product to the consumer, aka the listener? And honestly, that's, I think, one of the quintessential differences between Twitch streamers, YouTube creators, and podcasters is, yeah, you have these three levels of just nuanced crazies, sitting there looking at number analytical data. Is the one extreme of, I don't give a damn, to podcasters who sit there and go, but we lost somebody in the 15 minute mark, and somewhere in the middle, you have to find that happy medium of creating good content. As long as you're confident in that good content, the listeners will come, and that's basically what it boils down to.
And one of the issues that I have with producing content is like I've been on Twitch for 6 years. I've been on
Mhm.
this past January was my ninth year on YouTube, and
Mhm.
like I realized that I'm producing content now for the sake of producing content. Like,
Sure.
like if I make money, okay, but I'm
Right.
still gonna go out in the middle of a fucking pandemic and try to find a 9 to 5er.
Right.
But
Right.
but until that day comes, it's like you realize that the road that you're taking to get to that point is going to
Well,
feel so much worth it if you
yeah.
ever get to that point.
Now you realize, like, okay, what is that point for you? Is that point for you Joe Rogan status, and where you've got a staff of 25 plus, cranking out your content to the point of, and Joe does a good job of keeping his own work his. Um, However, you get to a point when you get to a larger status, syndication wise, and all that other stuff, where your work no longer is yours to a point. You might have a say in it, but you have people then over and under you saying, hey, by the way, when you put out this next one, we need you to XYZ. And you start getting people to kind of manipulate your content in a sort of way. And that only comes from them trying to make money themselves, right?
Right.
So, you take that, exchange a little bit. You're like, well, whatever. I'm making, how much ever, millions of dollars at this point. What do I care? And actually, I had that discussion with a couple people in the radio business. I'm not going to name drop, but it's funny. They're very successful at what they do. Okay, they were very successful, and I'll just leave it at that. But they said, like, listen, I would not be saying these things that I'm saying.
Right.
My character is, and my people say that my character needs to say this. So it's a little bit of that exchange, though. What is your level? What is your idea of a success? Is it, the $1 million mark, or is it, hey, listen, we're just creating good content? I think that my level of success is somewhere in the middle. If I never hit that, hey, listen, I'm creating a podcast a day, but I'm also exchanging it for like, $1 million a pop, then I'm good with that.
Like my whole thing about producing content is that I am looking for something that'll keep a roof over my head, food in my belly, and bill collectors off my ass.
Right.
I mean, like,
yeah.
And I made the mistake of back before the subscriber count for YouTube actually mattered to be a partner. I was signed on for 3 years with full screen right after the whole acquisition of Screw Attack and Rooster Teeth. That was the biggest piece of hot garbage I've ever signed, but I learned from that, came out of it better, and like it's not going to deter me from trying to still achieve that point.
Right.
And like, just because I had a setback doesn't necessarily mean that, and this goes along with anybody, just because you have a setback of any way, shape, form, or fashion, if you still love doing what you're doing, do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like the whole thing with meeting you via the Cinemasticast when we were doing stuff at. By the way, I don't know how you put up with Joe for as long as you did on a weekly basis, but bless your heart.
Listen, I'm not going to talk smack, but like I said, every show goes through growing pains.
Yeah.
And you have to sit down and really evaluate what is. And we have a cast of people, and it's true for any show who has a cast. I tell the shows that I'm producing with now, when they're like, okay, what's your 2 cents on this? I'm like, listen, you're going to come in. There are those days where you're going to come in and you are absolutely going to despise each other. You have to create good content out of that. There are going to be those days where you love each other and you have to get good content out of that. If you get to the point, though, where you're sitting there and you are butting heads at every single topic discussion off mic, and then it's starting to leak onto on air, you have to make some changes. You have to sit down and say, what is this show? Where are we going with this? And how are we going about it? And if, you start checking off boxes that say, hey, listen, this isn't working, that's when you have to start making changes. So, yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Well, on the topic of Joe and GTR, what steps occurred? Because I'm under the assumption that like I can't, well, even if it wasn't for COVID, walk into the studio and say, "Hey, I want to produce. I want help producing XYZ." Like, what Who came to who, and what were the steps that were taken to start providing GTR on a regular basis?
Okay, so GTR kind of fell into my lap. Um, when I first got, I guess, assigned Geek Tank Radio, this was back when they were still on AM 600 WREC, and their program director was like, "Listen, I've tried to coach them, I can't do it, and I don't want to take the time." Basically, just shoved it off into the corner and said, "Good luck," you know. And I did it just because I was like, whatever. I was a fool back then. There's another thing in radio where you never say no. Um,
Like pro wrestling.
yeah, you just never say no to an opportunity. So at that time, I was a full, I had a full plate, and I was like, sure, I'll take seconds. So just pile it on. Um, you know, and then I started working with the guys, and I was listening to the show, and I was like, listen, if you want this to be a success, a radio success, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I started, becoming a PD for them, essentially. And long story longer, uh, the show ended up mine, as a pseudo mine, where I was their program director. I took the show from an on air status, a full on air status, to a full podcast with an on air element. So there's a little bit difference there. The difference being the long form show was actually on air, and there were pieces of it on a podcast form. However, I switched that around and said, hey, listen, talk to your heart's content. There are no rules in the podcast world. So let's go with that route. And so we went to the podcast world with an on air element whenever it went to 1019 Kiss FM. And yeah, I kept evolving. The show itself naturally evolved. However, I helped that along a little bit with some production elements and stuff like that. I made it a little bit more, we'll just say, on the ears, a little bit more radio friendly, um, and we've kept it that way. We've always sat there and said, what can we do better? What can we do better? What can we do better? And then I just take that as a challenge and make it happen. So that's my job as the producer now, the executive producer behind Radio Free GTR. Um, while it's missing the on-air element, it's not missing any of the elements from air, if that makes any sense. You could take this show as is now, slap it on any talk radio. You could slap it on at this point, any top 40 radio if they're willing to take a shot, and it would fit right in, as far as imaging wise and how it's sound, how it's produced, the speed of it. It would fit right in to any of those formats. So rock format, especially. So I'm really proud of that product. It's really good, but that's true for any of my products. My three subs, a soccer odyssey, I sat there and produced it the same way. Where it's fast, it's entertaining. There's more to it than just what's on the surface. And I think that is what sets it apart. That's why it has the listeners, that it does, and they keep coming back consistently. Is because the listeners, they know that what they're going to get is a good product, and then an entertaining product, and it's relatively safe in that regard.
I'm not gonna lie though. What didn't sound safe is that with the name My Three Subs, if you are
Yeah.
not a damn soccer fan, you would think it would be a dominatrix podcast.
which is why we named it as such. So that's the funny thing about my brain, is like I sit there and go, how could it be misconstrued? And I'm sure people have found me on the internet, my three subs on the internet, and gone, this is not what I was looking for.
I was thinking of the other meaning.
Yeah, yeah, and so which is why on Instagram we don't have the same branding. our Facebook and Twitter is My Three Subs Podcast. However, on Instagram, it's My Three Subs Soccer Pod, because My Three Subs Podcast was apparently already taken by what you just named. So there is a podcast out there somewhere, a dominatrix podcast out there somewhere, or at some time that still has the Instagram handle. So
Kids, turn the safe search on when searching for that.
yeah,
You mentioned a part of branding, and
yeah,
like I've been myself have had multiple oh my god, what the fuck do I do with my brain kind of moments.
yeah.
Because it like I'm a retro streamer. Like if you were to see the backdrop of the Twitch stream, it's like rainwave, radio wave motif and stuff like that. I've ripped off the what is it, Miami Vice font for this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I'm such a nerd of retro stuff, but yet I still haven't found like a brand.
Yeah. So branding is funny in the sense that you can change logo, you can change color scheme, you can change aesthetic all day, every day. If McDonald's came out and their golden arches all of a sudden turned into red, right? They switched the golden arches to like this red crimson arch. Okay. Yes, it would be jarring, but the branding is still there because they didn't change the M. Okay. They just changed the color scheme. If they were to sit there and do away with the arches, look what they did with Ronald McDonald. Ronald McDonald used to be their, face of the franchise, and then all of a sudden they started to phase him out. There in like the late 90s, we'll say early 2000s, he kind of took a back seat to the Golden Arches, and it's interesting because the messaging and the imaging and the branding, as it were, did not change. The "I'm loving it" moniker stayed the same. The McDonald's phrasings and all their um, different food choices, they stayed the same. The McFlurry, the Mc whatever, the McDip in it. I don't know. But honestly, I haven't had McDonald's in like 3 years. But
Good on
um,
you.
yeah, well, it was hard to begin with. It's so much easier now, and now when I look at McDonald's, I'm like, um, but anyway, that's a different
That's a
topic
different
altogether.
topic. Yeah.
Yeah, but I use McDonald's as a whenever people start talking about brand because they did it so well. Their marketing is undeniably the best in any business. And why? Why is it? Well, they do it with frequency and they do it with consistent messaging. So when you're talking about branding, it has to be consistent. It has to be not what you're putting out visually, but the audio, the messaging, the whatever text or phrase has to be the same. And so that's why when, take Geek Tank Radio, we kept GTR in the name because we started referring to ourselves before we switched over to Radio Free GTR as GTR, the GTR network, the GTR this, the GTR that, we had so many iterations of GTR. So then when we went to Radio Free GTR,
It was
it
still
wasn't jarring.
identifiable.
Yeah, everybody was like, "Oh, that's what Geek Tank Radio is," and we were like, "Well, yeah, we're the same thing. We just don't call ourselves that because we have restructured that brand to be Radio Free GTR." The visual aesthetic behind that is still that purple color scheme, and it's kind of catchy and flouty there. And while that's important, we could switch that color scheme in a couple years or next year even, and nobody would flinch at it as hard as they would say we're no longer Geek Tank Radio, we are insert new brand, because the phrasing has stayed consistent, and that that imaging has stayed consistent. That's the trick with branding. And then when you do brand, like I said, that consistency has to be across the board. My brand, me personally, my brand has always been Brodee Scott. It's always been my name. Brodee Scott Productions is my business, but it's still my name. So when you search for me, you can search for my name literally on everything. I feel like Blippi. Yes, if you know who Blippi is, I have a 5-year-old. So you can search for my name, and I pop right up, and that's because I branded myself for so long, and I would like to think my consistency is there, but when you deal with personal brand versus a professional brand, there's sometimes two totally different things.
So one of the last things I was wanting to talk about was that I proceeded to ask the Cinemassacast for questions.
Oh boy, here we go.
And I got only one, and I cannot remember who it's by.
Either Wayne or Tannen.
Let me double check.
I think Tannen hates me.
It's like, you produce their stuff. I don't think it's a legit hatred, but
no, we stole Wayne is what we did. So, here's the thing: the joke with Geek Tank versus the Cinemassacast was always this. I used to take Wayne's ideas and use them consistently on the show because he had really good ideas. Until finally, I just got tired of taking the ideas and just took the guy. And as I told Wayne, I was like, listen, if I can't beat you, I'm just going to join you or buy you out. So, in which case, why don't you come over to the dark side? So,
it's like, why can you just have milk when you can buy the whole fucking cow?
Yeah, right. I mean, eventually you're going to have to marry it. So, the marriage happened.
Oh.
It turned into a thing.
So this comes from Wayne.
Here we
so
go.
Don't shoot the messenger.
All right.
But why do you hate Batman?
Yeah, it is. Batman, okay, Batman is the most unrealistic thing I've ever. As a geek, I understand it. I get it. But if you're sitting there and looking at, I like a level of believability. I say that. I like a level. Listen, if you're going to make it believable, make it believable. If you're going to be outlandish, Iron Man, unbelievable, right? Come on. It's possible. No. Thor. I love Thor, right? God of Thunder. I love all mythos. Okay, so I love Greek mythology. I love all of it. I love it. I can't get enough of it. Norse mythology right now, I'm all about. But Batman, you mean to tell me that this douchebag billionaire is unrecognizable to anybody because what, you can't see his nose?
You can't see, yeah.
And then 2, that he would give that much of a rat's ass about his city. I know you're making money off of the city, but that you would give a damn if you had that much money. Give me a billionaire and ask him if they give a damn about anybody. No, they're living in a country club or they're living in a gated community far away from the problems in their city, so they're not in it to win it. Okay. And then the other problem that I have with Batman is it's just silly. It just is silly. He's got, out there solving crimes and all that other. It's just silly to me. But I probably, pissed a lot of people off with that. But I can't stand Batman. So yeah. I explained it why. You don't have to like it. Listen, I'll talk about that.
I'm all up for I'm all for someone who has an opinion about something very unpopular and stands firm by it.
Yeah.
However, although I am a fan of everything that you said, there's bound to be someone out there that doesn't agree with you.
So, no. Yeah, no.
So I mean, it's just...
Listen, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. That is my opinion. And yes, I have an asshole. So,
Well, you're speaking to one.
Take it with a grain of salt. Yes, my bag is not Batman. However, there are plenty of people around me who will literally die on the sword of Batman, and good on them.
Oh, one personal question that I have for you.
Yeah.
Is it you or Joe that writes the intros to GTR?
Joe is no longer associated with the show anymore. So now it is all me, brother. Yes,
Oh, no.
I make them cheesy, and that is the running joke right now. So I'm going to let the cat out of the bag, and when I literally do the same thing with the segues and stuff like that, I make it a point to sit there and say, what is the worst, cheesiest way I can get from point A to point B?
Without cussing.
Without cussing. And it's just like, what is the over-the-top Disney Mickey Mouse way to put this to get us to the next point? It is
now
my life's mission on that show to make it
cringy.
And let me tell you why. Is because that is the one quality in Joe that I actually did absolutely love about it, is that he would come up with these stupid ass, segues, and you're like, what the hell are you doing, man? And it was just funny to me. I found it so funny because consistently he would do it. You call it a superpower of his. So it is now I have to work at it. Where I sit there and it'll be, I feel like the segment's coming to a break or whatever, and I'm like, okay, and I'm working something. That's why, like, you'll hear in a couple different episodes where I just drop off of the conversation. It has nothing to do with me not being involved with the conversation. I'm sitting there working out a way to get this cheese to grate on the ears of everybody. So yeah, that would be me at this point. Yeah.
Well, I kind of ran out of shit to talk about. So I was kind of hoping that we'd get at least half an hour, and 37 minutes in, I've accomplished that. So, Brodee, is there any plugs or anything that you want to shout out for?
Of course, we've been talking about it for a while, but if you haven't, give it a listen. I'm talking about, obviously, you've got Pops in the corner there, so if you like, your show, then you might, in fact, like Radio Free GTR. You can find it on any listening platform. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, because Amazon apparently has podcasts now. But yeah, we're on iHeartRadio. We're everywhere, so just search for it at Radio Free GTR. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram there. You can check out my other podcast, which is talking about soccer. So if you are a soccer fan, or maybe you have no idea what the hell soccer is, it's okay. We don't go that hard in the paint, if you will. That's a basketball reference. So we like to keep it entertaining and light, and we talk to people in the community and stuff like that. So it's a really fun podcast as well. That is My Three Subs podcast. You can just search My Three Subs. The full title is My Three Subs, A Soccer Odyssey. So My Three Subs podcast there. And then, if you need any kind of production, if you're looking at being a creator yourself, and you want your own little tidbits, and you want 2 cents on how to make it happen, I'm a consulting guy now. There are people who pay me big money for this. I don't charge that much, but apparently my rates are really good. So if you're looking for a producer or anything like that, you can always hit me up. I'm at Brodee Scott, BrodeeScott on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, like everywhere. So just search for my name and you'll find me.
All right. Well, I'm never good at any of these things, but to everyone listening, next time when you show up, shirts are required, pants are merely a suggestion.
Should I stand up now and show you my pants?